Assalamu alaikum. I'm Amina Haider, Lecturer, Institute of Business Studies. I'm here with yet another screencast of course titled Business Research Method. This is lecture number 9 and today's topic is research hypothesis and its type. The topic that we are going to cover in today's lecture are definition of a hypothesis, directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis, null and alternate hypothesis, and in the end we are going to summarize our topics. So moving towards our first topic, that is hypothesis definition. What is a hypothesis? Hypothesis is an empirical statement concerned with relationship among variables. By empirical statement, I mean that it is a statement which is based on observation or experience that doesn't automatically make them correct. Hypothesis is a Greek word which means to suppose or to assume. In very simple definition is a claim or is a premises that we want to test or we want to investigate. By testing, I mean that we can do a survey of 100 people and get some data, or maybe 300 people to get some data, and we can use that data to study the population. So hypotheses are actually the statement, the ideas that you have in mind and you want to test it. For example, I have that assumption that older people are better drivers than younger people. So hypotheses are the assumptions or the probability of something that researcher assume might happen or it might result. It's a logical relationship between two variables expressed in the form of testable statement. So just like previously we said that hypotheses are assumptions, so these assumptions revolve around research variables. Means like how the independent variable will be manipulated and how dependent variable will be measured. Hypothesis is thus useful to solve all research problems or issues. It refers to an assumption that is made to find out the solution of a problem. For example, I believe that there is a relationship between the usage of phone and headache. So the statement that the hypothesis statement that I'm going to check later or test later is that those who use more phone are more prone to headaches. So our first variable is the usage of phone and other variable is headache. So this is the probability. This is the chance that I believe between two variables, keeping in mind the previous literature also. Hypothesis thus is actually the supposition about a result that may or it may not happen. In other words, it's a statement or it's a statement of relationship which may or may not be true. So when we make hypothesis, it's not necessarily to be true. It's just an assumption, so its validity is unknown. In simple words, hypothesis is a statement of quantitative nature about population. Quantitative nature means that it needs to have it must be a logical statement, and population represent the field under study. For example, taking the previous example of the phone usage and headache, if we want to conduct that research on children between ages of 10 to 18 years. So that defines our population. So after a problem is being identified, the researcher would typically read literature and then make a hypothesis that what will happen during his experiment or what might happen. So it's a proposed solution or an educated guess. The next topic is directional hypothesis and non-directional hypothesis. When we actually write a hypothesis or when we actually formulate hypothesis, we write it in a format which might be directional or it might be non-directional. So what is a directional hypothesis? The direction of relationship between the variable positive or negative is indicated. So directional hypotheses are those where one can predict the direction, that is the effect of one variable on another variable as positive or negative. For example, if we say that girls perform better than boys, so the word better shows the direction that is predicted. Examples of directional hypothesis: the greater the stress experienced in the job, the lower the job satisfaction of employees. This statement actually indicates a negative relationship between the stress and the satisfaction of employees. Another example: women are more motivated than men are. That statement actually specifies the direction that women perform better than men. Women are more motivated than men. There is specifying a direction. So it's a directional hypothesis. Non-directional hypothesis: there is no indication of the direction of relationship between variables. So it depicts a relationship, but we are not sure whether it's going to be a positive one or it's going to be a negative one. Non-directional hypothesis example is: there is a relationship between age and job satisfaction. So this statement actually indicates a relationship, but that the difference is the direction is not actually specified. There is a difference between the work ethic values of American and Arabian employees. So this statement indicates that there is difference between work ethical values of American and Arabian employees, but it doesn't indicate which one is better. If the statement could have been that work ethic values of American are better than the work ethic values of Arabian employees, then that would have been a directional hypothesis. So non-directional hypothesis imply you employ that you don't know which way it will go. It's more hypothetical. On the other hand, in directional hypothesis, one try to convince other that his hypothesis is actually correct instead of letting people judge by themselves. So now we move towards the type of hypothesis, which is null and alternative hypothesis. The null hypothesis is a proposition that states a perfect exact relationship between two variables. It states that the population correlationship between two variables is equal to 0 or some exact number. In general, the null statement is expressed as of no significant difference between two groups. So a null hypothesis states a definite relationship between variable, but it doesn't indicate any significant difference between variables. The alternate hypothesis is the opposite of null hypothesis. It's a statement expressing a relationship between two variables or indicating difference between groups. Alternative hypotheses express a relationship indicating the difference between groups. For example, when I say that there is no significant change in my health during the time when I drink green tea, that indicates a null hypothesis. On the other hand, if I state that my health improves during the time when I drink green tea, so that indicates that there is difference between group. So when we reject the null hypothesis, the alternative hypothesis relating to the particular relationship tested could be supported. So example to explain the null and alternate hypothesis. In past example, we stated that women are more motivated than men are. Previously we said that it's a directional hypothesis. So to convert it into null and alternative hypothesis, if we state that there is no difference in the motivational level of men and women, then it's a null hypothesis. But if we say that either men are more motivated than women, or we state that women are more motivated than men are, then it becomes an alternate hypothesis indicating that there is difference between group. When we indicate difference between groups, that becomes an alternate hypothesis. In the first case, H0 indicates a null hypothesis, and it actually stores that motivational level of men and women, motivational level of men and women is equal. There is no difference among the group. And here it's an alternative hypothesis. It indicates that the motivational level of women are more as compared to men. So it's a alternate hypothesis. When we reject the null hypothesis, then ultimately it indicates that we are supporting alternate hypothesis. So another example to explain it, there is difference between the work ethic of American and Arabian employee. Previously we explained it in non-directional hypothesis. Like previously we said that in null hypothesis there is no difference among the group. So that statement H0, which indicates null hypothesis, this statement indicates that there is no difference between the work ethics of American and Arabian employees. The statement below indicates an alternative hypothesis, which indicates that the work ethics of there is difference among the work ethics of American and Arabian employee. So it indicates an alternative hypothesis. So now you would have fair idea about the hypothesis, the format to write the hypothesis, and the types of hypothesis. This is the reference book which I use for today's lecture. That's all for today. Thank you.